All right, so let's get started for today. I'm looking at a very interesting piece. Love the colors, but there is a little bit of an issue with the anatomy, and I want to talk about it. But before I get started, if you want your work critiqued, if you want to submit work for critique, there's two ways to do it. One way is Discord. If you go to the community tab right here and click on the Discord server, you can join us. Use the general critique channel or my subreddit community to join us. So basically, I host challenges every year, and in the summer, I also host a challenge that lasts all the summer. And this year, it's going to be a character design challenge. It's basically a contest as well, because you win my masterclass, Portrait Studio, one or two portfolio review sessions with me, my brushes, everything basically in my store. And if you are learning something from my channel, please consider joining as a $1 patron. It means a lot. It goes a long way. If everybody joins in, it keeps the community alive and backed, and it's an untraceable amount, so it's not really going to weigh heavily. But if everybody joins in, it's more effective that way. Let's get started on today's class. But let's bring up Portrait Studio and let's just basically repose this very same pose. So I'm just going to throw this to the side, try to pose it to be exactly the same sort of, and also the torso is not exactly facing the camera. And then I'm just doing that kind of slightly higher hip effect, and then I'm not really worried about the lower half of the canvas. So something's very obvious and it's sticking out. I'm sure you guys have noticed it by now. What is it? It's the shoulders. They feel so stiff. If she was leaning, if there was a little table here and she was leaning on it, that would make the image look a lot more natural. It would make the shape and the body look a lot more natural. So it seems like she's kind of just chilling at the bar with something, and then she's just wielding her magic while leaning on something. When you lean on something, your shoulder joints, your torso is still where it was, but your shoulder joints exercise their flexibility and they start to push up. So anatomically, this makes no sense because there is no force pushing up on the elbows and then pushing up on the shoulders, because this is one unit. The upper arm bone is one unit. So when you're doing something like this to make it feel more flirtatious or make it feel more flexible or make her feel more like a ballet dancer or doing more with it, ballet dancers never close their neckline. They never close their neck. Their neck is always stretched out as far as possible from their shoulder line. A flexible character, a elegant character, and a very, which is what I'm getting off of this, what you're trying to achieve. You don't think of stiff shoulders, right? This more looks like a hunchback character or a character with a deformity. So as soon as that word deformity pops up in your critique, it means anatomy issues. So anatomy issues read, when you're attaching them with realistic rendering, it reads as deformity. So let's fix that, because let's show what actually needs to happen in the Portrait Studio model for us to achieve the same level of closeness to the shoulders, from the neck to the shoulder. It's really, really unnatural. Her head is almost completely on her shoulder, which is a big problem. So she's hanging her arms off her torso. Her shoulder joints are carrying her arms up. That means they're going to be weighed down a bit. Just like if a character design character has some kind of heavy weapon, you never make the shoulders equal in size. If one arm is holding a hammer or a sword, that one arm's shoulder is going to fall really low. So just the standard model, which is proportionate to itself, doing all of this with the hands. The arms aren't as heavy as a sword, but they still are not so light that the shoulders are defying gravity, right? One thing I want to do is separate the head, so I'm not always distorting the head while fixing the shoulders. That'll really help me just do whatever I want on Liquify. I just want to find the neckline, ignore the face completely. I'm just fixing the neckline right here. So now it feels a little bit less intense, and then I'm just going to shrink the head a touch. I mean, a head can be bigger for skinnier characters. Alrighty, so I'm going to merge that down. Before, after. Do you see how uncomfortable she was? It was uncomfortable just looking at her. Look at that. Before, after. So what you did basically is you through these joints up here, and then you increase the size of the head. Even on a model, this doesn't look normal. Maybe that's a bit too much. But like even if you kept the head perfectly proportionate, it still looks uncomfortable. Something was wrong. But you increase the size of the head as well. Look what a little bit of referencing can help you with. If the proportions you had don't read well on a model, they're not going to read well as a painting. I know some of you guys think, oh no, my painting is going to excuse my mistakes, because a painting can kind of hide mistakes, because the world of painted work, the world of abstract artists' creations isn't necessarily the world of proportion, exact proportion. So you guys think, oh yeah, we'll get away with it. No, you won't. I'm just going to reduce the saturation of the background, just a touch. And what that's going to do is make space for the foreground, the light right here, there's purple to take over. And then what's happening is you're trying to show too much. There's only one light source in this entire scene. You're going to actually make the scene glow even more if you do it this way. So on darken, and I'm only going to delete whatever the light sees. So that alone has really boosted the atmosphere. Before, after. Do you see that? Before, after. When there's a gigantic light in someone's hand, we end up having a cast shadow of that character behind them, which means a little bit of that light can reach the background, and a little bit of sharpness wherever that shadow got closer to the body or to the elbow, anything like that. Alrighty, so we're going to take a look at the before and after now. So before, after. Before, so very it's mostly about the anatomy today. That's the biggest before and after change we're noticing. So before, after. Obviously there's more light atmosphere, there's more light presence now. You only picked one light source, so you have to stick to it. You can't just make everything bright because you're a character artist. I was telling my other student this today. Character artists are really biased towards characters when they're painting environments or anything. And they will always make them bigger, brighter, more visible, because they're character artists. They're all about the character, so they want to see more of the character. They don't, and that is a pitfall, because what happens? They end up prioritizing the character over fundamentals, which is bad, because environment always comes first. Light environment always comes first. Because the world had to exist before the character existed. So, you know, that's logical, but to a character artist, that's illogical. They don't want to put anything ahead of the character, so they want to show more of the character, but they don't realize their paintings will look more professional, more cool if they just prioritize the environment. Now this is an advanced piece, and so if I don't like these labels, but I use them for my educational kind of like research, I categorize beginner, late beginner, early intermediate, intermediate, late intermediate, early advanced, advanced, late advanced, that's kind of the way I categorize things. It helps me understand how to approach a student. I would call this painting early intermediate, because they're at least painting a whole image, but they're still making major beginner mistakes. Anytime you make a major beginner mistakes, you end up being pushed back into early intermediate or late beginner. This is not a late beginner by any stretch of the imagination. This is a very developed artist. They understand how to paint a portrait, how to paint an illustration. They don't get that yet because they haven't crossed over into the new elevated level of thinking where, hey, not everything is about me. Not everything is about my character. Sometimes the environment is important. Sometimes the light environment needs prioritization. That's maturity. That's when you become a more mature painter. So that's really what I just want to show you. Now it looks like advanced, early advanced, middle advanced. Painting. Late advanced would mean there's more characters involved, way more detailed, a rendered background. That's really what would make it a late advanced. But this would be early advanced, late intermediate. That's a huge jump in this paint over. And the actual changes that I had to do were so little. All I had to do was fix this. So imagine how many fundamental mistakes that are keeping you from making a huge category jump in your skill range. And you can fix them in one day, in 1 week of extra thought and note taking. Art isn't something that can only happen slowly. Art can happen pretty quickly if you teach your brain and approach it in the right way. So this small anatomy mistake with a little bit of referencing changed the skill so much, and a little bit of understanding of the light environment and just pure respect for the light. Like, you actually, you know, I try to think like you guys, or think like the way I used to think. I used to not give a goddamn about the light. I used to think of the light as something annoying. And now I compare myself to that. And the way I think about the light right now, I might as well, the way I approach light in a painting, I don't know if you guys notice, I approach it so respectfully, so carefully, as if I'm actually speaking to a god. You know what I'm saying? Like, I worship the light in the image, that I'm so respectful of it. I'm always thinking about it. So that's the difference between a beginner and a you know, later skill, is that you really start to contemplate the light. You really start to meditate on the light, like you're thinking about it. And your whole attitude and demeanor and respect for the light changes in your image. So huge skill category change, small actual changes that I physically did in an hour, but they represent a whole shift in thinking from anatomy to light environment. That's what I'm always trying to do with Critique Hour. That's what it's all about when it comes to Critique Hour. It's a lot of change. It can happen with very little effort, but it means a change in your mindset. Of course, everything goes back to the character, but the character needs the light. The character has to have a more believable light environment for it to look more immersive, more atmospheric, and more professional a piece. So if you learned something today, please consider joining as a $1 patron. That's Patreon, and you get the full Critique Hour of today. You don't just get the clipped version. You get the full Critique Hour, and all you have to do is just join for $1. That's called a watcher tier. And then there's the subreddit if you want your work critiqued. If you have a feeling that you're in between advanced and intermediate, or intermediate and beginner, and you're not quite sure how to push your work, I'm doing this for free for all of you guys. All you have to do is just post your art right here on subreddit or on the Discord community right here, and I'll show you guys what this small change can do and how big an impact it can have. Portrait Studio is on sale. You saw me use it today. You saw its absolute usefulness. Portrait Studio, I don't have to advertise it. I just have to use it in front of you guys, and you guys see its value. And it's also on sale. It's at $39 for the rest of the summer, or just until maybe the end of June or the beginning of July. Just most of the summer it'll be on sale. I have a summer sale every year. That's it really. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.